Well, hello everyone, and today we've got the wonderful Dr. David Cartland. I mean, I've admired him for quite a while through all of this nonsense and how he's spoken out and woken up to all the narrative. It really gives me a lump in my throat when docs see past their sort of standard med school training, and then they've got all the good stuff from that, and then all the good stuff that they find afterwards. And it takes a lot of bravery because you take a hit, and David's been attacked all over the place. And I just think that the bravery shown to speak out about this is fantastic. So we're going to go into some stuff about that. But David has also woken up about diet and the carnivore thing and been chatting to us, and he's found his own way as well, mostly. But we wanted to chat to him about his results on that, and how he's a disappearing man and all the old fat's disappearing. So David, thanks so much for chatting to us, and thanks for the inspiration.
No, thanks for having me, Phil, and Ben as well. And yeah, I've not been called wonderful for a long time, so thanks for that. But yeah, it's look, I signed up to an oath when I became a doctor, to do, to help patients, to advocate for them, and to not harm them, do no harm. So it's my ethical duty and my professional duty to speak out, and that's what I'd just like to remind my medical colleagues of as we go through this chat. This is something that we're duty bound to do. If you see a safety signal, or if you're concerned about issues around ethics, or people being potentially vaccine injured, then you need to talk about it. Don't gaslight these poor people. Just been on the phone to two today, and they've been utterly injured by this thing, and no one will admit it. People are being told they've got asymptomatic long COVID. That's the latest ploy by the medics, which is just absurd when you think about it. Anyway.
Yeah, that Hippocratic oath has gone in the bin recently, hasn't it? It's very, very sad. Really.
Been replaced by the hypocritical oath.
Yeah.
So to take us back to the dark days of 2020. Now, you weren't a foaming at the mouth anti-vaxxer when COVID reared its head, I understand.
Foaming at the mouth anti-vaxxer, brilliant. Yeah, I was just a doctor, being told that there was a killer pandemic on the loose. I was watching the BBC and the ITV, Sky telling us that people were dropping down like flies, and those bad crisis actors that they used, and going into work. In fact, I actually got signed off from going to work because I had asthma, so I got a free pass to stay at home. But I actually decided no, I wanted to join the war, join this battle against this unknown disease, and signed a waiver. Actually, if I die of COVID, I can't blame it on the medical centre that I worked at. Signed a waiver, and while I ran into the front line, there's a lot of doctors running the other way, and these people pulling out dusty old inhalers and claiming this, that, and the other medical history. But yeah, I went and fought on the front line, and I don't think I was expecting a war, and it was literally very quiet. That's the only thing I can say. It was silent. It was, I was working with another doctor. Normally there's 7 or 8 doctors working there at that surgery, and just me and another doctor, and our surgeries were a quarter to a half filled each day. You had nothing to do. I think that's where the TikTok dancing came in, to fill people's time, and just very quiet. And so in some of my spare time, I was going into hospitals. I joined up with a politician, and we were helping the heroes, in inverted commas. That was around the same time as the saucepans were being banned, and I was going to the supermarkets, fast food restaurants, and saying, "Can I have some food for these great people in the hospital?" So I was deep into it, and I was going in with Domino's pizzas, stacks of 10 or 15 Domino's pizzas, and being swarmed by completely bored out their brains A&E doctors, ITU doctors on the COVID wards. I was looking around, and there was tumbleweed flying through the building. Nothing was going on, and then I flick the TV on at home and see these goggle imprinted, sad looking, hazmat suit wearing people sobbing about all the death and destruction that this disease had caused, and it never really correlated. And this went on for about 12 months. Me sort of going to work and having loads of time on my hands, feeling quite relaxed, and then going home and hearing about this other thing, about this ticker tape of death. And then I soon realised that the deaths were a bit suspiciously reported, because I was, sending patients in with cancer and strokes and heart attacks, and they were coming out with a COVID death certificate. And I then had a little look at the data, and actually they're not reporting COVID deaths, they're reporting death within 28 days of a positive test, which is absolutely ludicrous when you think about it. There's no ticket for excess mortality there, is there?
Yeah, we had a young doctor friend, and early on in this, he sent us some handover sheets and stuff, for patients. And I've still got a file of them, a stack of them, and it was shocking because these people were on enough meds and had enough comorbidities to kill them within a couple of days, and then suddenly COVID scriddled along the bottom of it, you know,
Yeah,
scribbled.
it was
It's
blatant.
nuts. And it was going on everything, and we saw this really early on. It was obvious nonsense. In
Yeah, well,
fact,
the whole
he actually he was swabbing COVID patients, supposed COVID patients, and putting it up his own nose and trying to infect himself, and was unable to. And he's a young doc, he's carnivore, he's muscly, he's fit, he's healthy, but something should have happened. And then he started to notice that the people who were getting sick of his colleagues were the ones who'd previously had the flu jab. And he put two and two together. They thought he was mad, but after a while, they started to say, I think you're onto something here.
Yeah, all the people that I've seen that have become vaccine injured have all had COVID a couple of times or alleged COVID, and then they've had jabs upon jabs upon jabs, and sort of immune breakdown. Really, that's what I've seen. It's just, yeah, it's insane what's been going on. I mean,
quite often
even
they get COVID again, even after 3 jabs or 4 jabs as well.
Well, I've just had those hallowed words said to me by a patient this very morning that they've rang up and said my 80-year-old husband, no, dad is in bed. He can't breathe. He's coughing up his lungs, and they've done a COVID test and it's positive. And I looked at his notes. He's had 7 jabs, and I said to the daughter, I said, look, you know, I can't really bring him down the surgery because they'll all have a heart attack bringing down somebody's COVID positive, because that's what people are just trained to, you know, get a bit anxious about the word, the C word, isn't it? But then she said to me those hallowed words, thank God he'd had those 7 vaccines, because, you know, it could have been a lot worse.
Oh,
And,
they
and
say
even
that,
today, people are saying that.
It's like, you know, there was these sort of jokes about someone that sort of said, you know, people had died, and they said, well, it could have been a lot worse if he hadn't had the jabs. I mean, maybe he'd have died a day earlier or something in their mind, or probably been absolutely fine, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Going right back to the beginning, there was never any treatment ever. We weren't ever told. So with those days where I was in these kind of half-filled surgeries, you know, you weren't given any advice from the government to say, how do you treat? So, okay, somebody's ringing with a COVID positive and they've got a cough and cold symptoms. Even then, it was a very benign sounding disease, even though the newspapers would tell you about these case stories. I mean, the reason I was vaccinated was because I was told my friend was a COVID death. And then the very next day I went out and had my COVID jab because I'd watched her decline. But then the plot thickens. You see what happened to her during her ITU admission. And to say her death was iatrogenic, i.e. caused by the medical team, and all the subsequent, you know, the ventilators used, pneumothoraxes and, you know, midazolam and diamorph and steroids at, you know, massive doses, had no chance really. And so, you know, that feeds into that whole COVID protocol that was used in ITU, and it's just been added to the figures. So that's when I took my first jab. So that's where my story is slightly different to most people. I'm a vaccinated anti-vaxxer. I've been conned twice.
Did it kind of creep up on you over a period of time? Did just suspicions start to sneak in, or was there kind of one event that just smacked you in the face and knocked you, you know, on your ass? And
yeah,
you know,
it was a 12-month kind of sitting there
cross
waiting
the line to the dark side.
The dark side, yeah. I mean, it was literally 12 months of just info gathering, watching, and, you know, and seeing what would happen. But then I moved down to Cornwall, and when I moved into Cornwall, again, you know, the first jabs went in people's arms. Nothing really alerted me. I didn't pay any attention really to the mRNA aspect of it that I'm now, obviously, all I ever do now is read and research, but I didn't do that then. And my only defense for that is, you know, similar to this morning, I've just done an NHS surgery and I've spoke to 20 patients, and you do that twice a day if you're working in the NHS, and it's no excuse. But, you know, at the time I was in Cornwall, I was doing these 2-day weeks, which gave me a lot more time to not be frazzled and to research. And it's when I moved to Cornwall, I started to see pretty much after the second vaccine went in, a few just strange reactions to it. And it was when the booster really went in, the third jab. That's when there was a skyrocketing in things that I'd seen in things like blood clots, the heart issues, the sudden death, sudden adult death syndrome. You know, I was seeing, you know, the shingles, the Bell's palsy's coming in, you know, clots galore.
I've never even heard of sudden adult death syndrome until the last 2 years.
I completely agree. I've never heard of it in my life, but now, you know, so you jab somebody in the vaccine centre, they drop down dead. Just the old sudden adult death syndrome strikes again, and no questions asked. So there was a eureka moment, Ben. There was when I was working in a surgery in Penzance, and we had 2 death certificates come through, and they both said AstraZeneca. Cause of death 1A AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, and this was all within about a week and a bit. And on the second day of the second death certificate, these were 40 and 42-year-old.
These are from a coroner.
this is, yeah, they've had actual postmortems, the postmortem reports, vaccine induced thrombocytic thrombocytopenia in both death certificates, and they declared that the cause of death was 1A COVID-19 vaccine, AstraZeneca, both of them. And the second death certificate that came in, there was a chap who collapsed, 41-year-old male, always having casting my eye towards the vaccine status of the patient, just to keep an eye on any trends or warning signals. And the guy had his AstraZeneca jab yesterday and collapses the next day. And I always remember the conversation because I was duty doctor, and they rang me up from Derriford Hospital, which is our neurosurgical centre, and said, we've got one of these patients, we're going to treat him with blood thinners and the rest. And I said, look, he had his AstraZeneca jab yesterday. Do you think it could be, and this was months ago, do you think it could be the vaccine? Fresh in the mind of having these two death certificates land on my desk. And they turned around and said, I remember him, he huffed at me and said, Dr. Cartland, you're not one of those anti-vaxxers, are you? I just said, look, somebody's been injected with an AstraZeneca, and today he's got cerebral venous thrombosis, and you don't see a causal link. And he tried to blag me off with it was something to do with sinus inflammation. The sinus inflammation that caused his brain clot the day after an AstraZeneca jab. So this weird kind of,
and it's a completely different set of rules, isn't it, for these jabs than anything else. So if you go in for any kind of surgery, if you go in for heart surgery or whatever, and you die within like 4 weeks or whatever from that surgery, isn't the surgical team going to get together and have a special meeting with, with the management and try and establish whether the surgery itself could have had any influence over that death?
Yeah, nothing makes sense. None of it does. Like you say, they'd have a morbidity mortality meeting and discuss what went wrong, where you can learn from the events that happened. And we've gone from that and things like consenting people properly and telling them about the 1 in a million chance of death from a general anaesthetic to literally nothing about the product. In fact, they give you a leaflet after they've injected you, giving no information, fully coercing people, and all the rest of it. That's just the ethical aspect of the COVID-19 jabs. But the rules have been broken, like left, right, and centre. None of it makes any sense. I don't think I can think of any scientific measure or claim to be scientific measure that made immunological sense. Things like asymptomatic carriage, all the 2 metre rule and the lockdown, and we knew damn well at the beginning from Pfizer's own documents that this never stopped transmission. So that throws out lockdown, that throws out the 2 metre rule, the rule of 6, and all the rest of it. And we haven't even talked about masks, which is just a joke.
Yeah, and people would get so aggressive about them. I mean, I always joke because our postman retired, who was great, and a new guy came round, and he was just, the kids called him Muzzly Postman because he was still wearing 2 masks outside now, walking around, and these people have been terrified. And I asked him, I got locked out one day, and I was waiting for the missus to come back with the key, and he came around. I said, you've got a little something on your face, just trying to mess about with him. And he went, yes, it's a mask. But it saves me. I know the truth. And if anyone sneezes when I'm delivering a letter, I could be dead. I thought, you poor dude. And then suddenly he's walking around with no mask on. And so I went out and I said, look, I've got to ask you, what changed? Because I want to see what changed in people. And he just started getting really aggressive again, saying, you've overstepped the mark. That's none of your business. I said, no, absolutely fair enough. I was just interested. But the incredible terror and aggression that people have had with this, splitting up families, it's setting people against other people. It's been crazy, but this is the division they want, I guess.
I think you're right on that, divide and conquer. And, everywhere you look now, whether it's kind of some of the stuff I'm talking about on Twitter at the moment is some of the sexualization of children, for example, breaking the family unit, trying to just divide, whether it's colour, whether it's sexuality, every way they can, they're trying to divide. It's just incredible. But like you just mentioned, it's that aggression from the other side. All I've really done in my position is try to, stand up for my Hippocratic oath, for starters, to promote ethics, to promote safety, to promote evidence-based medicine, and to help people who've been injured by this and were conned. I was conned. Lots of people have been conned. I've spoken to 2 people this morning that have been vaccine injured. They were conned. They did it because they thought they were doing the right thing and their doctors told them. So my morality here is just to help people. Whereas the other side, you get told when you speak to a vaccine injured patient, this aggression that faces them as soon as they mention, could this be the vaccine? And the doctor changes, the mood in the room changes, the aggression level goes up a few notches, and then the gaslighting begins. This is all in your head, mental health. And, it's never the vaccine, but it's always long COVID is the other one. Every time I hear that these patients have been gaslit into believing that they've had some sort of, the latest one is asymptomatic long COVID, they've had some sort of disease that never manifested itself, aka they were well. Back in the old days when you had no symptoms, you were called well and healthy. But they were saying that 2 weeks after a Moderna jab and you have a stroke, it was because of an asymptomatic COVID jab 12 months ago. And the doctors are telling them this. The doctors believe it, and the patients believe it because it's come from the doctor or the nurse who they trust. And so this is where the trust has been abused in the last 2.5, 3 years. And particularly in the elderly population. That, I spoke to somebody today, he's had 7 jabs and has got COVID again. And then, as I mentioned, they thank God that they've had the jabs, because it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, my missus is a nurse, and she's seen horrendous things. I mean, she's had no jab. She's been absolutely fine. Wouldn't wear a muzzle. You can imagine the hassle she got. And her colleagues now, younger ones are developing sort of galloping cancer and autoimmunity, and they've had tons of jabs. And one of them's on her sort of, I don't know, 8th or 9th bout of COVID. And she's had the jabs, But I'm thinking maybe I need to be a good global citizen, because thinking about it, my missus is black, she's an anti-vaxxer, and she doesn't have a penis. And so really, this is no good these days, is it?
What does she identify as? That's the key.
She identifies as a woman, which I think is very close-minded.
Well, Phil, I think you're just a far-right extremist in that case. It's that I know what box to put you in now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, one of my GMC complaints at the moment is around, apparently I've showed hostility towards LGBT, and they've shown me the evidence for that. And the evidence is literally me posting pictures of inappropriate things that happen at Pride marches. So, and I know from contact with the LGB community that they're absolutely furious at the overreach of the T part and the rest of the acronym, whatever it is at this point in time, that it's been overreached into. So GMC have got me down for showing hostility to the LGBTQ plus community. And all I've really done is posted pictures saying, is this appropriate, of like men on their knees in dog gimp suits with their backside showing to children and twerking about children. And we've got drag queen story hour down in Cornwall last year, where you've got men in sexualized clothing reading bedtime stories to kids in libraries. And I'm just saying, look at the curriculum at the schools at the moment, and I've been called out as a bigot and a transphobe for that. And all I'm doing is looking out for children and not sexualizing them at the age of 9, telling them to learn how to masturbate.
It's the schools have gone nuts, haven't they? My daughter's school called the police on me for even mentioning the jabs. So they just can't deal with it. There's so much cognitive dissonance, isn't there? But the whole thing with the kids, it's unbelievable. Surely I thought it would be, they'd have overstepped the mark when they came for kids with the jabs, because the kids were never at risk, even if you believe the COVID narrative. The kids were never at risk, and suddenly they're jabbing there. And suddenly, I did a video, probably it was 2020, I think. And it was just obvious what was going on, really, that they were focusing on the wrong pandemics, whether there was a pandemic or not. The pandemic is the over-medication, the advice about diet. Everybody is obese. They've got all these issues going on. And I made this video as something about get plenty of sun, eat loads of fat, save the NHS, save lives, or whatever, protect the NHS, save lives. Doing that thing around and going through various stories. I got quite emotional about it at one point, where I was going through sort of anonymous stories, people in hospitals and they're on diabetes wards, they're having their feet cut off, and they're feeding them jelly and ice cream and peanut butter and sort of jelly sandwiches, jam sandwich, God knows what they feed them in the NHS. And all around the corridors, they've got the sort of chocolate machines and this kind of thing. I mean, I mentioned that to my mum's oncologist, and he'd never considered it when she had breast cancer. I put her on a carnivore diet, bit of iodine. It's on my YouTube channel. You can see the tumor reversing. And I've told this story many times, but I said to him when it happened, I said, is that the first natural cancer reversal you've seen? And he said, yeah. I said, and you're an oncologist? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'm a drummer and I've seen quite a few. These people who don't open up to it. But I made that point, that we've been made sick. For them to even be able to put COVID on a death certificate where it was some other kind of comorbidity. And this is a real pandemic we should be looking at. And I'm so excited about you having found out about this diet thing, because at med school you get trained in the wrong diet for about 5 minutes or something. And so what brought you to that, and how did you discover that, and what are your results on this? I think this is brilliant.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said earlier, that I've had to unlearn a lot of stuff at med school. So I've you go to med school, you sit in the lectures, and it's very prescriptive learning. A lot of my analytical thinking and asking questions came from a previous degree that I did in the biomedical sciences. So that was very different, and it taught you to question, critique, appraise what you were reading, and never accept things as gospel. When you jump into the MBCHB program, you're just told, follow guidelines, and it's all drugs at the end of it, and it's that drug for that drug for that, and if that doesn't work, add the 2 drugs together for hypertension, for example.
People say that someone training to be a doctor now, the amount of training that you actually get in diet and preventative health can be counted in hours, not even days. Is that your experience?
I think that's an over-exaggeration. It's less than hours. I think I must have had one lecture on nutrition, and it was the plate of food. This is the plate of food that you should eat. I had one lecture on vaccines, and the vaccine lecture was something along the lines of vaccines work, they're safe and effective, and if you speak out about them, you're going to be Andrew Wakefield, and you're just going to get kicked out and rubbish. So, but going back to, like I said, I've just put it into context, I'm learning a lot of natural stuff at the moment, and I myself have had 2 vaccines, and the decision for me to go on to look for a diet that would help detox my body was all about fixing myself at the time, because I was getting, some really serious cognitive issues, like brain fogs, memory issues. It happened in an interview a couple of weeks ago where the person interviewing me asked me a question and I just didn't process it. This was about 8 weeks ago, should I say. And it was really worrying how much forgetfulness. I was starting to slur my words 3 hours into a morning surgery, and I just thought, I need to find answers here. And that's where my research into kind of some of the natural remedies around vaccine injury came from. And somebody, one of the doctors in a group that I'm part of, just said, try the carnivore diet. Because I've been afraid to go on the treadmill, because you keep seeing about these cardiac deaths in younger people. So I quit football last year, and like most footballers do, you get fat after you stop playing because you're not training and you're not going to the gym and you're not playing your 90 minutes every week. And I put on a bit of a pot belly, got some man boobs on the go, all the cognitive issues. And I thought, I need to get out of this because I can't even see my feet. I can't see anything when I look down south. And so I thought, I've got to find an answer. And then a lad from the doctors group said, have you heard of carnivore? And I've been putting it off actually for a few weeks to actually try it, because I like snacks. I like Pringles and Doritos and chips and crisps and all the wrong stuff. Great doctor you've got here, but I just decided to jump headfirst into it, and it was literally me just winging it. I was told about intermittent fasting at the same time, and I kind of just amalgamated both together. So I just decided to eat between 12 and 4 o'clock and don't eat outside of that. So that was a ketogenesis aspect of it. But then just go for meat. And, this doctor was advising me that, you just eat fatty meat. And it just didn't sound right, And I've heard bits and bobs from doctors like Kasim Al-Hatra who have said, this is how to treat your cardiac patients, do the opposite of what the cardiologist tells you, get rid of the statins, eat fat, kick out the seed oils and all the rest of it, but, cook with butter, the fattier the meat, the better. So I've just been on this journey of...
They're not seed, they're heart-healthy vegetable oils.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm slathering everything in butter and eating plates of meat without any vegetables at the moment in the short term, and supplementing with lots of things that, I've got a protocol for vaccine injury that I use, so I take a lot of supplements at the same time. But the end result is, I weighed myself. I couldn't bear to do a before and after photo, should I say, because I didn't want to show my man boobs off, but I've gone from 105 and a bit kilos down to, measured myself 2 days ago, 90. So it's a 15 kilo weight loss. But it's not just the weight loss, it's been the energy levels, it's been the sharpness of my brain's return. I'm not having these slurring moments and forgetfulness now, and energy levels are great. My aches and pains have disappeared. I'm literally picking the kids up when I'm playing, and instead of groaning in pain because my knees are hurting, I'm throwing the kids through the ceiling because my muscles feel stronger as well. And it's only this week that I've added in a bit of exercise now, so just trying to learn how to build that up slowly when you're in ketogenesis. But I feel absolutely amazing at the moment. It's been a massive game changer, and long may it continue.
So for anybody in parts of the world where you don't understand what a kilo is, it's 33 pounds. Or almost 2 stone, which is very good going in British terms. That is amazing, but
that is good.
Not uncommon.
No, the great thing about it is as well that doing it like this, as opposed to the sort of repeat business models of Weight Watchers and Slimming World, where you're losing bone density, you're losing muscle mass, you're losing some fat as well, and also ruining all your hormones and whatever. This way, you are maintaining or even increasing muscle mass, bone density, and losing the fat. And I really agree with Ken Berry that it shouldn't be called the carnivore diet. It should just be called the proper human diet, because that's what we've eaten for millennia. You look at the tribes now, people think, it's like, I was just chatting to a vegan today, under a episode we did with Gareth Icke, David Icke's son, a couple of days ago, Ben and I. And they're saying, oh, we're designed for seeds and nuts, and we just never had it. There's nowhere in the world you can live on plants, and none of the plants that are in the shops existed back then. And so we're told that these are the healthy things. And so it's, for anybody watching this, there's no point listening to any diet guru. We're not diet gurus, Ben and I. We just look at ancestral stuff. I studied diet for 30 years, wrote books on plant-based eating. I was vegan, vegetarian. And because I got caught up in all of that, the things that come from the elites, the controllers, the religious and spiritual factions that say you have to eat all these plants. And now with all the processed foods, it's gone completely crazy. And so instead of that, just throw all that out. Everybody just stop and say, wouldn't we do it with any other animal? What do they eat in the wild? What do they eat in the wild? And that is the diet that they need. And that's the same with us. And yet there's all these misunderstandings. Like we often say, humans are the only species intelligent enough to make their own food and stupid enough to eat it. And we've forgotten what we're supposed to eat. And it is so much cognitive dissonance, isn't it? You said yourself just then that it sounds all wrong. Eat fatty meat on its own. That's crazy. And we all thought that. It took us ages to come around to it. I went through every other diet in the world before I came to something so dangerous as eating only meat. But when you look at the tribes in the wild, even down at the equator, they're eating 90% meat. Up in the north, they're eating 100%. They ate it all the way through the ice ages. They ate it through the winters. And so it's not a fad diet that we're talking about here. I mean, you've discovered how humans are supposed to eat, and that's that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I feel more human now, honestly. And I mean, this is the reason we were given the teeth we've got in our mouths, haven't we? We've got teeth that are there to eat meat with. That's exactly what our dentition's even there for. So, but yeah, I'll be honest, it was a rough first week. It takes some getting used to. I did get the keto flu. I was laying in bed thinking I've got man flu, and and for a short amount of time, I did feel rubbish with the hypoglycemias. But I think it was about day 6, day 7 that I ended up getting. Switching. It was like a switch overnight. I just didn't feel hungry. Quite satisfied with. Now I've got it down to 1 meal a day now. So I've been eating at 4 o'clock with a plate of meat, like a carb-free mixed grill. Just feel great. My wife looks at me a bit strangely without any potatoes and veg and stuff. But it's been an absolute revolutionary change, and tell everyone about it now, particularly vaccine injured people, to get that cellular detox going on as well. A lot of the doctors who are so-called awake in inverted commas, first thing they talk about ketogenic diets, and a lot of them are leaning towards carnivore diets now for that reason. Cellular autophagy, so your body detoxes at a cellular level all the heavy metals, all the spike protein and all the rest of it. And I feel like I'm literally detoxing. It feels great.
And a big part of that is, like you've mentioned, the intermittent fasting, because you just give your body a break for, well, in your case, practically 24 hours now, right, rather than the short window, when your cells have got nothing to do but get busy with housework. They can clean up, they can break down dead mitochondria and recycle and everything like that. So, and apoptosis is the other one, isn't it, as well, when cells are allowed to die and become recycled. And so you're giving your body a break. But I mean, I used to have to post something starchy in my mouth in my vegetarian years every 2 hours. And if I didn't, I'd get grumpy and miserable and emotional and want to cry or hit somebody, And now I just rarely hit anyone at all. It's completely gone.
Yeah, the first week I was very hangry, I think they call it, just hungry and angry and snappy because I just wanted some Doritos. But I don't actually watch my kids. My daughter loves Doritos, and I look at her now with an absolute disgust as she's scoffing on them. But they're a bit too young for carnivore at 6 and 4. But when they get a bit older.
Yeah, we find I've got a video on my channel of I called it "Carnivore Kids Dying of Malnutrition," just to annoy the vegans and get them to tweet it and link to it, and they did before they actually watched it. Because my kids were, I mean, my son was breast milk and then straight onto meat. He's 8 now, but he has a odd bit of chocolate and a couple of fries now and again if we go out. But he's basically fully carnivore. My daughter has strayed off, being 14, and she can go out and buy Pringles or cancer in a can, as we call them, and she'll find things like that. But basically, if we cook, she just eats meat. And my son is 33. You know, we brought him up veggie, and he had a load of issues. And I see my kids getting healthier and stronger, wider jaws as it goes on. You know, as I keep sort of spreading my seed as an old man now, 61, and I've still, you know, got young kids. But it's fantastic to see, you know, how healthy, how robust he is. He's just, you know, no fat, heavy, definite bone density and muscle mass. And, you know, we were around at Ben's the other day, and Ben's Mrs. Sally plays netball, and Peter was throwing a ball with her, and she said she's never seen a kid sort of throw that hard. Actually, he's just very coordinated. The brain works really well. He's affectionate. He's chilled. He's hilarious. You know. And this diet is supposed to have, you know, is supposed to kill people. I mean, this is the sort of diet you'd have your kids taken away from you for feeding them, but it's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine, because they're just little humans, aren't they? You can just bang it into them, and they love it.
The mental and emotional stability that you get is something that we don't talk about enough. But David, you mentioned that as well. So what happened with your brain fog and all that stuff? Is that lifted? Has it improved at all?
Sharper than I've ever been. Honestly, I'm stronger than I've ever been. You know, I've got to admit, I was skeptical about this. You know, people were saying, look, you can get onto this carnivore diet and you feel great and your sleep's great and your muscles are stronger and all the rest of it. But it's just been remarkable. And you know, I say this to all the vaccine injured now, you've got to get on some sort of, whether it's carnivore or something paleo ketogenic or something where you've got that autophagy aspect to it. Brain fog went as soon as I started it. It was really after the first week of having a bit of hypoglycemia, I think it was more than anything, feeling a bit giddy. I couldn't even take the dogs for a walk for a week, just didn't have the energy while I adapted. But once that switch flicked, the brain fog disappeared. Cognitively, I've been great. You know, I don't get tired anymore. I get out of bed feeling fresh. You know, about 8 weeks ago, I was getting out of bed with like old father time, the crippled knees were hurting, picking up the Lego off the floor from the kids. Couldn't get back up without my wife hoiking me up off the floor. It doesn't happen now. My knees still creak, but they don't hurt.
That's great. That's great results that quickly. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? This is what people don't understand. That so a lot of people wake up to the whole thing of grains, seed oils, that kind of thing, but then they don't realize that you know, what we're told to eat the rainbow, eat 5 a day, that kind of thing. It came from nothing really. It was just some marketing thing, wasn't it? The 5 a day thing didn't come from any knowledge that we're supposed to eat 5 a day of things that didn't even exist 200 years ago. And then the leafy green thing that no tribes eat, they don't eat any of this. We're told to eat kale and broccoli and all of that sort of thing, and spinach. I mean, the spinach smoothies, the kidney stones that I had from that, I mean, horrific. And the toxicity, when you know, Anthony Chaffee, you might have come across one of the carnivore docs, and he's very hot on the plant toxins. And, you know, I've been carnivore 8 years now, and I knew about the plant toxins, but not the depth that he's gone into it. And that, you know, people listening to this, they might be surprised. They go, well, I eat some meat, but I love my veggies. And great, we should think everybody should eat what they want, but be educated that it's very possible that there's 136 known carcinogens in an organic Brussels sprout and 60 in the least toxic veg. And these are the ones we're told are superfoods. And you know, so you go when people go plant-based, they think, oh, well, I need some health. I need to go, you know, sort my diet out. They go plant-based. It's out the frying pan into the fire. In fact, it's out the frying pan into the furnace sometimes, because not only is it going to really hurt you, it also tastes shite as well, doesn't it?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I joked earlier on that the vegetable oils are, you know, the seed oils are actually heart-healthy vegetable oils, but there's a very good reason why they didn't call them seed oils or industrially processed seed, whatever it is, exudation. That why they call them vegetable oils is because everybody knows that vegetables are healthy, and that's what Phil's talking about. It's like the final level boss of unlearning this stuff is this conceit that fruit and vegetables are the healthy option, and they're just not. Fruit is nature's candy, you know, and fruit was nature's candy what we've done is create a bastardized version of it, because we've bred it for maximum sugar content. They did a survey in the States trying out lots of different organic or load of range of strawberries. And what scored highest across the range, highest sugar content in the strawberries. That's all people care about. They're absolutely addicted to sugar across the board. So bananas are now just basically sugar. All of these fruits. Tropicana orange juice. You know, you might as well drink a can of Coke or a Red Bull. Seriously, there's nutritionally, yeah, there's a little bit of vitamin C, but nowhere near enough to counter the amount of sugar that's in there as well. Or bloody Sunny Delight, and people think they're giving kids the healthy option, but there's so much to get out of there.
There's a lot of money being made if you go to the supermarkets and you look at those super smoothies, aren't you? But actually, when you look at the sugar content in them, you just like might as well have a can of Coke, like you mentioned. But I did actually sample it. It was my 21st birthday, not quite 21st on Monday, and I actually had some cake. I broke the diet and I had a tiny bit of cake. I felt sick afterwards. I felt sick. I felt nauseous. I got heartburn. I came out in a rash. So it just shows, doesn't it, that I won't be having any more. As good as the cake looked, I won't be having any more of it. But it's just bizarre that in such a short amount of time, I seem to become.
That's one of the things that we try and coach people, because there's two main things that you've got to do to achieve the switch to your species appropriate diet. You've got to retrain your thinking, which it ain't easy, because you've had however many years you've been alive of being told fruits and veggies are good for you, eat the rainbow, 5 a day, blah blah blah, you know. But you've also got to retrain your habits. So one of the things that we try and get people to do is to see anything with sugar in, you know, sugar and anything with it in, it's a recreational drug. You might as well have smack or crack. You know, it's highly addictive. It does affect your mood, but because it affects the dopamine receptors in the brain, or the wheat does a different one that works on the opiate receptors, I think. But you know, they light up the same parts of your brain as heroin and cocaine do, and they are super addictive. But once you can start to get your head around that, once you can start, and we have people in our group saying, I walk around the supermarket now, and it's like not food, not food, not food, not food. You know, it's where's the food? You know, it's really there's almost no food left in the shops, because what food is, it's what nourishes you and satisfies you, and that's what you found. You have one big plate, one big mixed grill, right? Gives your body everything it needs, so your body rests well, and you're not hungry. And the reason you're not hungry is because your body's got the amino acids going in there, and the fats, the correct fats going in there, and all the micronutrients you need, because that's what we are. We are carnivores, and we cycle those through prey animals, which is the way that nature works.
And the one thing I would say, in the last 6 weeks, I've not come across a carnivore that's regretting being a carnivore. Everyone reports the same. Everyone's, you know, I tried it very skeptically, and, you know, I'll carry on this as long as I can now. And I've not come across carnivore regret.
The only people that criticize it are people who haven't tried it, I find.
Yeah.
You know,
I did try and sell it to a vegetarian the other day, completely by mistake. I was talking about a vaccine injury and talked about carnivore and the results, and at the very end they said, well, I'm a vegetarian. So she wasn't very happy that I was talking about eating animals. But
I know, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, if we can get rid of all these things, all the misconceptions on all those levels, that it's also, you know, it's eating animals is bad for the environment, you know, farting and burping cows are causing the climate change hoax. You know, all of this nonsense that's happening. If we can just get rid of that and get rid of this, it's not spiritual, it's not this, it's not that. I mean, the crops kill way more animals than ever a carnivore diet could. And so to get rid of that on all those levels, and this is what we find, you know, why Ben and I are doing the Big Fat Challenge, to get people in, to educate them on every single level. I mean, you mentioned something there about eating a bit of cake and having a real bad reaction to it. And this can happen when you go carnivore, because there is a readjustment also of the microbiome, and there are certain, I mean, people who say they understand the microbiome, they're lying, right? Or because it's so complex and we haven't really looked into it. And the microbiome will rearrange them. We do have certain bacteria that help us to digest the things that we shouldn't be eating, and so the body breathes a sigh of relief and goes, right, we don't need that anymore. You know, it's like you have a few sunny days, you lose your raincoat. You go out, it pisses down with rain. You go, oh well, it was worse than when I had my raincoat. It was raining, yeah, because you didn't need the raincoat anymore. And that's what kind of can kind of happen. So people say, oh, it makes you very sensitive. No, it's just your body is so appreciative of coming back onto the its species appropriate diet. It does react to things that aren't food at all. And how many other myths are there? I mean, that one about fiber, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, I've never had, as I joked, you know, when I was on Sean Baker's podcast, and I said that my turds now could be on the cover of the Bristol Stool Chart Glamour calendar, you know, and I want to wake up the missus and say, look at this crowd pleaser. It's just after years of being vegetarian and pooing like 6 times a day. I mean, have you died of constipation yet, David?
No, I'll be honest with you, that was one of my big concerns, actually, the constipation aspect and not getting fibre. I'm absolutely fine. In fact, I had irritable bowel syndrome, to be frank, before this, and that's another thing that's cured itself. I used to get bloated and very gassy and all the rest of it, and go to the toilet probably too often. I go once a day now, and I don't want to compare turds, but but yeah, fine. It's cured my bowel issues, so, yeah, amongst other things. So it's been an all-round game changer, like I say. And yeah, I was a bit worried at one point. I got a bit stubborn in the first week, but it's fixed itself.
Yeah, again, as the microbiome rearranges, we can have issues with that. And some people get real loose stools. Some people it sorts itself out. Some people might find, oh, I haven't had a poo for 3 days. I'm terrified. And then you say, well, are you bloated? Are you in pain? Is it the same as the constipation you had when you're eating plants? No, it's fine. I'm just, well, you pass a lot less because you digest it beautifully. And, you know, all of these myths are so easy to blow up when you actually try it. And there's another one that people always come, where do you get your vitamin C? You know, well, I'm 8 years into it. I still am waiting to die of scurvy. It hasn't happened yet. But you know, the vitamin C competes with the carbohydrates for that pathway, and you don't need it. I mean, all the old ship's captains knew that the cure for scurvy, not only for keeping it away, but the cure for scurvy was fresh meat. They had dried meat and they had ship's biscuits, so they're going to get scurvy because it's competing with the pathway and they're not taking any in. And nature knows best. Again, ignore all the diet gurus. When do we get extra vitamin C? In the autumn, when we have the berries that have the carbohydrate in. So they understand, they know. You know, nature knows rather when to give us this stuff. And if everybody knew all the myths, it is hard for people to take in sometimes, because everything we've been told, if you just go for the eat well plate and do completely the opposite, you're pretty damn close, right?
Yeah, and I'm hearing case studies all the time of people that are reversing their metabolic syndromes and their high cholesterol sorts itself out if you do the carnivore diet. And I saw somebody yesterday, I can't remember the name of the guy who did it, but posted it on Twitter that he'd done some renal function tests on somebody who had CKD stage 4, and it reversed it. He did periodic blood tests and he'd gone straight back to normal GFR after a period. It just doesn't make sense biologically in what I was taught at med school that should be the case. It should be the opposite. You know, your creatinine should be through the roof and it should be affecting your renal function adversely, not the opposite. You know, but people are starting to say now, you know, I've said it a few times, do the opposite of what your cardiologist tells you to do. I've not given out a statin for a long time now, but
nice.
You know, it's a unique relearning of medicine that I'm going through at the minute.
Yeah, the kidney thing is funny, isn't it? Protein's going to kill your kidneys, and yet it's not even particularly a high protein diet; it's a high fat diet. But we've seen late stage kidney disease reversed on this. It's wonderful. It's not even amazing now. It's amazing to me that people haven't figured it out. Sorry, Ben, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on the high cholesterol thing as well. You know, they've sorted out the high cholesterol. When you eat your species appropriate diet, the amount of different types of cholesterol and carriers going through your body will just be appropriate. There's nothing to it, and there's an awful lot of myths around that, and with the whole statin thing as well. Insane. So CKD, you mean chronic kidney disease? Yeah.
Well, the issue with cholesterol is that there's nothing wrong with LDL. There is when it's the small particles, right? Because that shows a high LDL when somebody's eating a horrific diet. But if your LDL goes up, it's no problem at all if the triglycerides are less or balanced with the HDL. And if that, then it shows, because they never test. I always say to people, if your doctor tells you LDL's high, you know, look at the triglycerides and the HDL. If they're balanced, you're fine. and also ask him, say, oh, so the LDL, did you test for the particle size? Do you know? And they go, docs, they're generally not heard of that, you know?
Even in this morning surgery, Phil, I've had 2 people that had to call about their cholesterol. I've ended up telling them to take a carnivore diet, believe it or not. But they had cholesterols of 5.1. Now, 5 years ago, that 5.1 would have been normal. It used to be 7, then it was 6, then it was 5.5.
Well, they keep moving the bar down, don't they, to shift more
So
statin.
essentially, my phone call was to tell these 2 folk with cholesterols of 5.1 with HDLs that were sort of 2 to 3, so really good ratios, to start a statin, which I didn't do. I told them to eat fatty meat and do some fasting. So they were a bit shocked for me to say that, but I said do it for a month and then recheck your cholesterol, and it does. You see the ratios correct themselves, and the body uses the fats in the right way, and then you see the total cholesterol come down, and the trigs come down, and the LDLs come down as well. Like, it's a miracle. I've only seen 2 or 3 cases where I've seen catalogued reductions in the cholesterol, but it works, and it's quite counterintuitive.
You also said that you've been recommending high fat, low carb, keto, carnivore to patients who are vaccine damaged. Are there any results that you're seeing that you're able to share with that approach?
The issue I have, Ben, is that I have a bit of a kind of throw the kitchen sink approach at vaccine injury, because these people have been gaslit and left to it, and they're quite disabled. So I kind of go down the list of throwing everything at it. And the first 2 things I always talk about is CBD oil and carnivore diet, get on a ketogenic diet. And then you look at, I take all the supplements still myself, because I worry about spike protein metabolism. So, and most of it's naturopathic stuff now. Not 1 or 2, probably 1 item is antihistamines for mast cell activation syndrome. Is the only drug on that whole protocol. Everything else is things like turmeric, garlic, milk thistle, pine needle tea, things that are just natural antioxidants, natural anti-inflammatories that you can take either in natural form, or you can cook with it, or you can take capsules. I take a lot of capsules, for example, turmeric, curcumin, black pepper, cayenne pepper, all these tablets I swallow, but all natural.
Watch out for the turmeric. It's full of oxalates. It's full of oxalates.
I think you told me that.
We have we've got a detox, jab detox protocol. It's Elliot Overton on EO Nutrition has some wonderful stuff about neutralizing the spike protein as well. I have to send you that. It's really, really cool ideas, but things that blow that up. But also on our Red Pill Revolution site, we've got a jab detox protocol for the graphene oxide and the metals, so that they've got in there. But it's very hard to tell, isn't it, what was actually in there? I mean, the latest reports I hear is that it was only like 4.5% of them that were the real kill shots. And then there was another sort of level that were not so great. And some people were even getting saline. So they've created their own control group, haven't they? So it's really difficult to tell what is actually going on. So I understand the kitchen sink approach, because, you just don't even know what's in these things, as well as
It's genius, though, isn't it, when you think about it? I mean, I spoke to a chap a few weeks ago who had a spinal stroke. The chance of having a spinal stroke in a close proximity of a vaccine, again, being told it was just one of those things, but he actually researched the batch number, and 7 people in his batch number had spinal strokes. That's like the equivalent of winning the lottery in a bad way every day for a fortnight, really, getting all those spinal strokes in one batch. And we're seeing a lot of batch correlations, and one batch seems to cause a lot of myocarditis, another batch seems to cause sudden death. So small numbers of batches, as you mentioned, around circa 5%, 10%. But that's just dark, isn't it, when you think about it? Why is there such a small, if it was a quality control issue or production issue, then it would be across the board. But there are reports of saline, there's reports of contaminants, but they just happen to be genetically engineered plasmids that contain SV40 promoter sequences, which are oncogenic cancer switch-ons, and they're grafting themselves into the genome. So, we know all of this. But they still gave it. I find it bizarre to get my head around that. All these contaminants. I've seen viral analysis done live, where they've done live analysis of Moderna and Pfizer, and the guys who are looking at it can't even identify the structures within the vial. It's stuff they've never seen before, and these are organic chemists and biochemists. They just call it junk, but there's certainly not a lot of mRNA in some of them. There's certainly not a lot of lipid nanoparticles in them. But then other vials have got loads of lipid nanoparticle and mRNA, and then you see some of it self-assembling, and that's just when you think, geez, what's going on?
That's just a conspiracy theory, though, David. Nothing like that happens.
Yeah, it's all conspiracy.
I know. I know it's very alarming seeing those self-assembling things, isn't it? But I think this is where the jab protocol on the red pill revolution could help people out, because nobody really knows, but there's safe protocols that are designed for, well-tested protocols for getting rid of heavy metals and whatever. And it also obviously includes a carnivore diet, because that's the best way to give the body a chance not to be dealing with any other toxins while it's trying to get Borg technology out of the cells and bloodstream. Crazy stuff.
It is crazy, and it's just hard to get. I mean, every single day I wake up hoping it's a bad dream, but no, it's not. Again, the 2 patients this morning, and what I have noticed actually is that the people who have been duped and took it and were conned, they're getting angry now. They've realised that they put 2 and 2 together. They've realised that it's not asymptomatic long COVID, and they're angry. That's the gist of the last 2 weeks worth of vaccine injured patients. They are not best pleased, and that's what the medical profession need to be aware of. That people are now twigging it and working out that they've been conned, lied to, coerced, and it's quite nefarious when you think about it, isn't it? That the doctors are just turning a blind eye and hoping it goes away when they're seeing blatant. I keep getting told causation, correlation, you can't prove it. You've got to prove it's a vaccine injury. Yet the self-same doctors are writing COVID-19 on every death certificate with no due diligence, and the same doctors are calling it long COVID, asymptomatic long COVID in some cases, where somebody collapses and has fits a day after the AstraZeneca jab. Oh, that's just coincidence. It's very bizarre kind of cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
What kind of either pressures or incentives are you aware of on GPs and other doctors to give those inaccurate causes of death or diagnoses?
Yeah, I mean, if I could explain that, it would make things a bit clearer for me. I just don't know. I don't know what's keeping doctors complicit with this now. I don't know what's keeping doctors. I mean, they weren't paid a lot of money. It was something around 12, 13, 14 quid a shot. So they weren't making mega bucks. And the same with the certification, there wasn't any kind of financial benefit that I'm aware of that putting COVID-19 willy-nilly 1A on every death certificate made anyone any money. So I just find it quite hard that these people are still, even now. I mean, they're pushing the autumn boosters, aren't they? We're talking about number 8 now for some people. Now, how can they? And on that list of people, they've got household contacts for immunosuppressed people, immunosuppressed children on that list. And it just blows my mind that we're so far in. If your jab works, and your lockdowns work and your masks work. I mean, I work with people now who go into full PPE. They've had 6 jabs. And they're going up and down, changing their PPE every single patient. We're talking about August 2023, and it's causing. I mean, this vaccine's causing lots of terrible reactions in patients, and it's destroying immune systems. I mean, the last 2 months I've been doing clinics where it's like it's the middle of winter. People who are fit, healthy 25, 30-year-olds, you look in one eye at their vax status, have had 4, have just recovered from shingles, for example, and then they're getting chest infection, urine infection, fungal rashes. They're just never well. Perpetually unwell on the 3rd course of antibiotics. We're in the summer. I've had 2 of those this morning where people have asked for their 3rd course of antibiotics.
Aren't they also threatening to add it to the annual schedule as well for many groups?
Yeah, they will.
Annual COVID jab now on top of your annual flu jab.
The whole thing's so flawed because, the reason there was never a COVID vaccination was because the one thing they know about coronaviruses is they repeatedly mutate. You can never catch up with the current variant, and that we saw that in autumn. The autumn booster that they brought out, not only did they not test them on any humans, it was mouse models straight into the human arm. They're basing it on Delta variant and wild type Wuhan variant, which are 2021. It's like using your flu jab from 10 years ago that's been left around in the fridge. You just don't. The science is so flawed. It's very bizarre, and to put it into an annual regime just doesn't make any sense. It's a bit like them trying to make a vaccine for disease X that doesn't exist.
It makes economic sense. That's what it does. So for anyone who's watching this or listening to it, who's concerned that that they've taken one or more jabs, and what can they do about it? What would you advise? First of all,
so like I said to you, the two big hitters. Like I said, I've got a 5-pronged attack now on COVID vaccine injury. Number 1 is get on a ketogenic or carnivore diet. If you can. I'm not going to push carnivore on a vegetarian, for example. So, and second thing, the CBD oil has been a big game changer for me as well in terms of aches, pain, sleep, stress. And then the three-pronged attack of what we know of the pathophysiology of spike protein. So we know, that we get in the human cell to make a non-human protein. By design, that's just not a good idea, is it? It's going to invoke an autoimmunity. There's no way that it's not. Human cell makes it gets given the instruction manual for a spike protein peptide. The body's going to attack it, and lo and behold, what are we seeing? Three things actually. We're seeing immune destruction. So I recommend people have sort of immune boosting supplements. I do use supplements myself, so I will keep pushing them in terms of, I take vitamin B, C, D, magnesium, and zinc. That as a baseline immune boost regime. And like I say, I'm seeing people picking up incessant coughs, colds, viruses, bacteria, all the rest of it, fungus as well. When you get fungal infections, that's a sign that the immune system's struggling. We do full blood counts on these people, and they've got low neutrophil counts, no lymphocytes, and these are the kind of cells in the army of the blood that fight infections, and they've got suboptimal amounts. So get the immune boosters in. Number two, you're looking at blood thinning. We know that one of the things spike protein does is it causes microclotting, so at the level of endothelial dysfunction. So you need to take something that is going to thin the blood subtly. So I always recommend either something like a mini aspirin, probably the only allopathic drug that I'd recommend, or something like nattokinase or serrapeptase, which are more plant-based alternatives, and they will just thin the blood subtly. There are obviously contraindications to that. And then finally, it's that autoimmunity and chronic low-level inflammation in the body that this persistent production of a spike protein will cause. And there's a two-pronged attack I use for that. One's around something called mast cell activation syndrome, and turning people's vaccine injuries around with really simple stuff like antihistamines, low histamine diet, of which carnivore is one of them, and getting mast cell stabilization. So using something called quercetin, again, which is a plant-based mast cell stabilizer. That's one aspect.
I was just about to ask you about that, because it's also a zinc ionophore, isn't it? It opens up the cell to zinc.
It does, yeah. A lot of these things cross over into the different groups in terms of what, like nattokinase, it's blood thinner, but it's also good for spike protein metabolism as well. And then I have a big miscellaneous list for anything that's plant-based or natural stuff in terms of turmeric. I know you've said about turmeric but there's things like milk thistle, pine needle tea, dandelion root, pomegranate's really quite good for sort of antioxidant effect as well. So
if you get the curcumin, then it's pretty much taken a load of the oxalates out from the turmeric, and it has the same kind of action, doesn't it? So that's fine.
And if you're not on a high oxalate diet anyway, then we know that your body can handle a low oxalate diet. And in fact, this is one of the things that we can help coach people through, is that if you've been on high oxalate, so if you've been on like a veggie vegan with loads and loads of spinach and leafy things in the past, you could have a huge oxalate load in all of your tissues, including the bones in your body. And then suddenly to stop can cause like an oxalate storm, really, as all of that junk is released into your bloodstream, leading to gout-like symptoms, which I had for a period of over 2 years until I started to figure it out. But yeah, a low oxalate
kidney stones. My God, I've been
I'm
there.
drinking kidney stones. Yeah. I'm drinking black tea right now. It's relatively high in oxalate, but that's my only oxalate input. So yeah, and again, Phil, do you want to talk a little bit about the Big Fat Challenge if somebody wants some assistance in finding out about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ben and I have done. It's just been wonderful since the beginning of January, and we just started this off as a live challenge for people, and so now we've got it available. All of those 90 calls. It was a 90-day challenge. All of those 90 calls for people, and you can see people with all their sort of issues and little hiccups and whatever. It's very interesting to see them going through it, and having little energy things and how we can figure that out for them, and oxalate dumps and all kinds of things. And just great, you see there's one guy who's had open heart surgery and whatever, and he's now off his heart meds, he's off his diabetes meds, he's no longer type 2 diabetes. And it's all very simple. It sounds like sort of real magic, but it isn't. It's very, very simple. And then we've got the challenges like every week for 13 weeks, and we've got all the info on seed oils and this and that and different things you can do. You can do it all in one hit, or you can take it as a challenge, and over the weeks, lots of videos on various aspects of this, and a Q&A. There's a Q&A once a week, and if you want to get more info and more calls, you can get on a Big Fat Tribe as well, and we have more calls every week, and we talk about all kinds of things. Some of the things we talked about on here, which we don't stray into too much in the challenge, you know, because otherwise we get all our channels pulled and everything. But also there's my courses, there's my Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me book. There's our Red Pill Revolution book and Red Pill Food Revolution that Ben has done the audio books for, and that's marvelous to show how the plant-based diets have been pushed on us over the centuries by the elites to make us controllable and suggestible, you know, and weak. And you know, we just try and blow up as many myths as possible, and we're all still discovering about all this stuff. But I mean, I think we know enough about the diet now to give people some serious results. And you know, it was lovely when we started talking to David and seeing his results, and he was getting really excited. Hey, I've lost this, I've lost that. It was great. I mean, we love to hear that, because you know, you just don't expect it. You expect to be dead from something or other if in a couple of weeks if you only eat meat, right?
Yeah.
Sean Baker once said, one quick thing there, because Sean Baker, I thought it was hilarious. He said, you know, because the vegans always attack us and whatever, and Sean Baker said, even if I die at 106 from a rock to the head, the vegans will still blame the meat.
And the other thing about the Big Fat Challenge is that we want it to be available to everybody. So we do it on literally a pay what you can afford basis. So although, you know, we ask for $99, which is like $1 a day for the 90-day challenge. If that's not affordable, you can just pay what you want as well on there. So we don't want anybody to be turned away from having access to this.
This is too much, because we're sorting out the real pandemic here, the three of us, and it isn't some invisible virus. The real pandemic is what makes people susceptible to that. Is, even if viruses exist, do they? I don't know. There's even that rabbit hole. We'll leave that one for today, though. But David, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see your future progress. And anybody who wants to have a look at the Big Fat Challenge, check out our videos. There'll be a link below. And we'll see you on the challenge, and let's see all your results too with this dangerous way of eating.